And my message to the team was, I know you're hurting. Frost is like a brother to me. He gave me an opportunity to come here and coach at my alma mater, coach at the University of Nebraska. I would always love him and always appreciate him. I would always respect him. The kids would always love him. But I know they were hurting. But at the end of the day, that ball's going to kick off on Saturday. So mentally, we had to get him back and get him ready. We got 9 games left, right? Well, as a coach, you got to stand up here and say, we're trying to win 9 games. But we're not worrying about 9 games right now. Remember, I just said what? We're worrying about this game this week. So we got to take this one at a time with these kids. We got to take this one at a time with this staff. So we're going to take 1 week at a time. And then when we get to 9, then we'll see where we're at. But this week, the most important thing right now is preparing to get ready for OU. Well, you knew when the Oklahoma week was. You knew. The fans let you know. The coaches will let you know. The students will let you know. So you knew it was a big game, and you knew that that they were going to come in. They was going to be just as talented as you, because at that time, it was OU, Nebraska, and Colorado. That was the 3 top dogs. So you knew an OU game, and you was excited because you got to play a really good football team.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
It's NUOU week. Let's get them.
That's right. Down to business for Honky. Also the Redcast, Rob.
Oh, I would just like to confirm after our broadcast on Sunday night that Urban Meyer will definitely be in town this weekend in Lincoln. I can confirm that. My sources have told me. My private jet tracking apps confirm it. So I guess, yeah, Urban Meyer to Lincoln. It's confirmed.
He is coming here as part of the big noon kickoff. That's true, Rob.
Is that what that is?
And also with Boomer.
Well, I know my name's come up in a lot of reports early on this week, and it's always an honor to be considered for new podcasts. But I'm committed to the Redcast. We've got a job to do this week, so that's totally what I'm focusing on, and we'll just kind of go from there. So
till they dangle $10 million in front of you, Boomer, then you'll leave us.
Well, yeah. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're back on it. We did take Monday off to breathe a little bit and also wait for a Mickey Joseph presser, which Honky, you ran quite a bit of there in that first intro. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that and get ready for Oklahoma, to your point, Honk, right?
Yeah. It's kind of it's weird that the Nebraska-Oklahoma game is an afterthought right now. It seems like almost, after all the change that's happened in the last few days. But yeah, we are playing the big rival that we've had for, decades and decades this Saturday, and they are ranked number 6 in the country. So, it really is in our best interest. And I think Coach Joseph, I've got to transition myself to saying that head coach Joseph, interim head coach, that he really wanted to start to move the focus today in the press conference to Oklahoma, and that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be plenty of time over the next several months to talk about the coaching search, which will be ongoing, and plenty of rumors will fly, and I'm sure we'll attack those as they come. But Honk, before we dive into discussion, do we want to talk about our sponsors?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, number one is the Hail Varsity. You can go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and use promo code Redcast to get $10 off your subscription. And it should be of note, where we were at on Friday night during our live one, the Hail Varsity Club. If you are a Hail Varsity subscriber, you get 10% off your food and ticket, everything, if you go to the Hail Varsity Club. And the food and drinks there are just outstanding. So plenty of reasons to get yourself a subscription of it, but absolutely use Redcast at promo code, get yourself $10 off the annual subscription. Next up is Alumni Hall with the 2 Lincoln locations. There's Rob's photo with the Hawaiian Nebraska shirt. Go downtown, 11th and P, and also South Point Pavilions right behind the Barnes & Noble. FSC Edge, Redcasters, if you're looking for a new position, a new job, a career change, check out FSC Edge. You can find their available spots at www.jobs@fsc.com. And last but not least, Smack and Smooch, custom shirt specialty items, T-shirts, koozies, the whole thing. We have the War Daddy Up one, but Rob, I think you're wearing one that Shane just made for you too, right? The We Almost Always Almost Win T-shirt. So you can find them at Smack and Smooch on Facebook and Twitter. Shane and Laura out there in Elwood. So
well, and let me just say too that if you do purchase one of these shirts and you post it on Facebook, be ready for not Boomer's mom and dad, but your Boomer mom and dad to comment about how stupid you are, about how you have a defeatist mentality, and that they absolutely hate it, because that's the feedback I've gotten from older Husker fans on Facebook.
And someone like you to draw negative responses, Rob. I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly, if it was one of you, it probably wouldn't, but something about my face.
That's probably the truth.
probably it.
It's good stuff. Honk, before we dive into tweets of the week, one last promo for the Yahoo Fantasy College Football Pick'em, the Go Big Red Cast bets. It's group ID 5209. Password is Betcast. I know it's already 2 weeks in, but you do can exclude your two worst weeks. So if you still want to join, you aren't really going to be penalized that much. I don't know what the tally was last week, but I'm sure it was a competitive, because the Betcast, I think, went 3-1 on our best bet. So. All right. Hunk, ready to head into the tweets of the week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a crazy weekend with everything that went on with Frost. For us, all four of us came together. We did a live show on Friday night at Hale Varsity Club. We did a live pregame show on the sideline. You and Boomer did, Dave. And then post game, awesome. we did one right afterwards. And then we ended up doing a Sunday night show after Frost was fired as well. So busy 3 nights in a row. As you mentioned, we took last night off so that we could take a break, but also tonight that gave us a chance to do everything get all the video from Joseph's press conference. But this was a tweet that we posted, and it was Sunday morning right before all the Frost news came out. But it was last night was a painful end to what truly was an amazing week for the Redcast. We did our first ever live audience Friday night at the Hale Varsity Club. Even had a drink there named in our honor. Then Dave and Boomer were in the press box for NUGU. Thank you, Redcast Nation, GBR. And it's not lost on us, and I just, not to get sappy for a second, but it's not lost on us that was a really cool opportunity that was afforded to us. Redcast Nation, everyone that's following us right now, everyone that will be watching and listening to this later, it's because of you that we were able to do it. I mean, if we don't have an audience, they don't really care to have us there, probably. So the audience, as good as we think we are in our heads, the audience helps out a lot.
And we think we're pretty good.
We do. I don't know if you can read this as well, but this was the Redcast cooler, $8. The effing yuzu citrus vodka, watermelon Malibu, lemon juice, lemonade, strawberry puree, sugar rim. It was.
Watch your mouth there, Honky.
Did I say? Yeah. This is PG, right? So anyways, we just want to thank everyone there again with Herdat and Hale Varsity. And it was a lot of fun. Thank you everyone that showed up, and we'll keep doing this. So that's the tweets of the week.
I
Absolutely.
guess.
Well, Honky, before we dive into Mickey Joseph, I mean, I think we want to, there's a lot of stuff out there on media talking about the kind of demise of the Scott Frost era. And, I don't think there's a lot that we can add personally to it, but I think, it is important to continue to have some closure on the regime, I guess, to try to help us turn the page. And there was a pretty interesting, let's see if I can play this, Honky, a video that was at Herdat Sports with Michael Severe. Let's see if we can hear what he has to say.
That there's so much. If somebody really wants to write a book about this tenure, it would be, first of all, it would allow Trev to walk away and go, this is why. Because he can't talk about that stuff. Right. He can't talk about his head coach being late for practice every day. He can't talk about his head coach not making recruiting phone calls. He can't talk about, and I can talk about it, because it's over. But There's a whole bunch of stuff. There was a mess up there. It was an absolute. You had assistant coaches going to the athletic department and saying, the AD, and going, hey, this is happening. Help us. That should not happen. You should not have to have your assistant coaches complaining about your head coach because he's not doing what he what's supposed to be doing. That's an issue. And so hopefully somebody writes all that down and puts it in a little book and sells it. So that way Trev can go, it wasn't about the losses. It was about everything.
Right.
This guy was not, for whatever reason, committed to doing what he was supposed to do as the head coach of Nebraska. I don't know why, but he hasn't been. And I'm not just talking about this year after they forced him to make changes. I'm talking about every year he's been in here. Every year he's been here, it's been stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go around, there's stories all over Lincoln about things that he did or didn't do that he was supposed to. This is a lack of commitment on his part. He wanted to be the head coach. He wanted to make the money, but the commitment to everything else was not there. And that is a distinct problem.
All right. Well, that's a lot, right? I don't know how much that can actually be substantiated. But I mean, I think, there's quite a bit of that stuff from some of the other media members, and maybe not quite so direct as severe there. I was listening to all the sports radio, and when Sam McEwen laid out just more like just from the media probably should have been a little bit more critical of the Scott Frost and his entire, really his program, his staff in general at certain times, going all the way back to Maurice Washington and that whole incident where it probably wasn't handled well from many angles. But I think there's more about how we need to turn the page and find a coach that, as Trev was describing in his press conference, that loves this, not just Nebraska, but loves coaching, is a grinder, and can really be committed to really seeing this as a success. Boomer, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're just a fan podcast, so we can't confirm or deny any of the rumors or things we've heard about. I think everyone's probably seen at least something, on the dark corners of the internet in one way or another. But there seems to be enough that there probably were issues there, and there had to be some sort of issues. Otherwise, the program wouldn't have been 16-31 over the last 5 years. So it's
the why.
Yeah, the why is there. It's not just losses. Why were there losses? Why were there problems with development or strength and conditioning or defense not clicking? Whatever it is, and a lot of that is something kind of internal that Trev has talked about, and you need to know why these things didn't work so you know how to fix them and correct them going forward. So I think that's an important thing. We'll probably never get the full details of it all. Maybe bits and pieces will come out, but it's definitely important. Trev has to know, what went wrong and what changed. And there probably is some truth to what Sam was saying, that the media could be a little, harder on this, because I think that this kind of goes with why we sort of want a coach or somebody who's, ready to be that head coach, because there's a lot of things that are tough about being a head coach. And it's possible Frost just wasn't ready for it at this point, because he was only a coach for 2 years, a head coach for 2 years at UCF, and kind of unique situation. A lot goes into being a head coach, and it can be hard. And
Honky, Trev mentioned in his presser, that, there's advantages and disadvantages for the Nebraska job, but that goes for all coaching football jobs across the NCAA. And you can say that there's maybe more scrutiny upon a head coach here than a lot of other places. We have more media than almost anywhere else, especially per capita, no doubt about that. But at the same time, there can be advantages, right? But I think there's a coach out there that is going to welcome that challenge.
Yeah, we talked about it a week ago with how to fan. Should you boo or should you not boo? Well, booing at the very least meant that people still cared, right? That was the comparison against UCLA, that they just don't show up. They're not in the stands. That's one way that people can speak too, is with their silence. That's fans. When it comes to media, the media, there's going to be plenty of it here. There's going to be a lot of demands of media on you. Mickey is obviously going to be learning about that all week in his new role as interim head coach. Part of any time that there's a coaching change is the inevitable media dump. And that's kind of exactly what, we're starting to see here. And I do find it a little interesting is that, part of the complaint prior to the season was media demanding more access. But then if you're not going to tell us what you know anyways, or limit what you're going to tell us, that's interesting when it comes to, access and everything. But at the end of the day, the reason that we posted that, because we questioned that within our group before we went live. We're like, should we post that? If it was someone not credible, we wouldn't have. But it's Michael Severe. We've had him on our show. Right. Tonight he's hosting Big Red Wrap Up earlier tonight. So I mean, it's not someone that doesn't bring credit to it. We're not here to discredit Michael, or we're not here to.
No, I don't think you would say if he didn't believe it.
Yeah, we're not here to add on to the Frost stuff either, because he's not able to defend himself at this point. It's more just for me. I think it puts a little bit of closure on. It's over. The Frost era is officially over. It's done. And I think as we start to move into Scarlet colored glasses and talk about today's presser and everything, Dave, you start to see maybe the things that what Joseph is talking about, or the things that Trev talked about on Sunday, the thing that Trev wants us to what he's looking for in the next coach. We'll see what Joseph gets to, what he can do here in the next 9 games. I've heard people say, Frost, still some people complaining he didn't get enough chances. He had 47 chances. Joseph's only going to get 9. He'll get 9 chances, and we'll see what he gets to do with them. I'm excited for Saturday. I'm excited to see what Mickey Joseph can do with those 9 chances, and we'll have some time to talk about that.
Hey, Rob, you want to wrap up thoughts on this?
Is he asleep? Rob, you okay?
I think Rob is either frozen or numb to the conversation. I'm not for certain.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. And when I have a pointy stick, kind of
that he's numb to the conversation.
I hope he's okay.
Yeah, you're right up there. I mean, is it?
Honky, do you? If Rob comes back, we'll let him have
Sure.
some thoughts on this topic. But in the meantime, we'll move forward. Honky, looking at our run sheet here, do you want to talk about the new wide receivers coach before we launch into Scarlet colored glasses?
Let's do that during Scoring Explosion. So we'll do Scarlet colored and just kind of have a general view of it, and then we can include that in the offense.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and put on those Scarlet colored glasses and talk all things Husker football. And we have quite a bit of clips from Mickey Joseph there. I think it was a pretty good press conference overall, especially for someone who hasn't been a head coach, at least anywhere near this level. And what did you glean mostly from that, Honk?
Well, what I really was impressed with was it wasn't perfect at the beginning. He stumbled on a few words, and we could get really critiquing. I could bring out the Toastmaster in me and count the ums and ahs, but the reality is that's not what's important. And that's
don't do that to me on this show. I have too many ums and ahs.
Oh Jesus! I when I re-listen to myself, I'm like, oh no, there's certain things I say over and over again, but it's not about that. And Trev made it not about that on Sunday. I mean, Trev said it doesn't matter who wins the press conference. Now, for what it's worth, I think Joseph kind of did win the press conference too. I mean, he started to move and shift the focus to Oklahoma. He answered all the questions about the defense that was asked. He talked about his chances and what he needs to do to win it. He gave praise to Frost where he needed to. I mean, there's a lot of things that were hit on here. First, I want to kind of like focus on this first part here where he talked about his chance, a little bit of what his chances with the head coaching role, and we'll go from there.
I think when you accept the interim job as a head coach, I think that's the opportunity that you're working for, is to become the head coach. But we understand what goes along with this profession. It's wins and losses, and that's what it's going to depend on.
There is such a no-nonsense to him, and this isn't brand new. I mean, we were saying this back in January when he was first brought on. All offseason, he would call people out that he was coaching if they needed it. He wasn't afraid to do that. And one thing for certain that's kind of happened over the course of the last 4 years is that there were definitely excuses for when things didn't go right, or there was always some reason why it didn't go right. And I think at the very least here, I mean, I'm not saying we're going to go out and win every game or win any games coming out of here, but I think we're going to get what Mickey is thinking during it. I mean, he's going to tell you his thoughts, and it's going to be pretty unfiltered. I'm pretty sure for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that will be I mean, that could be refreshing. We'll see. You know, maybe that will. I think it will land a lot better if we can win some games, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's changes that need to be made to win games. I don't think we can just simply say, hey, we just take Frost out, put Mickey in his place, and all of a sudden we're winning football games. No, I mean, there's fundamental changes, some things that have to happen. Real quick here, this is one that Mickey talked about with the practice schedule that they're going to change up.
The practice schedule, just the off day. The off day is now going to be on Mondays. We'll bring them in on Sundays, but everything else will stay the same.
You know, I was driving by there this morning, and they were practicing in the morning, and you get to think about that. It's like they can't really, just from, you know, class schedules and everything, Frost has always been a morning practice person. Well, even if Mickey today said, nope, I want to go in the afternoon, I want to go at 3:30 like we used to back in the 80s, it's not like he can make that change. You've got schedules and, you know, students.
There's class schedules in particular.
Class schedules and labs and all that.
Athletes is still a thing, right? So,
yeah. It's still, that still means something. So you can't just do that to him. But what he can do, and this limited amount of changes that he can make this quickly, they're going from having the off day being Sunday, and then they would practice on Monday. Now they're going to come in on Sunday, and they'll have Monday essentially off there. So I don't know what to make out of that from an immediate standpoint. If we beat Oklahoma, I'm not sure I can, you know, everyone in the country, everyone's going to start taking Monday off then, but I'll start taking Monday off. Why not?
That's right. It's a good idea. Hey, Rob, you back?
Yeah, sorry, all that talk about Scott Frost and his personal life and all that other crap bored me so much I turned off my internet.
Well, we're glad you're back, and we have turned the page
to
talking about Oklahoma and Mickey Joseph. So I think you'll like that.
Oh, well, absolutely, because 58-24 Huskers. Joseph goes 9-0 to end the season. Is that what we're saying?
There's the Redcast Rob that we all know and love. The Kool-Aid is being drunk. Honk, what other video do you want to hit on here? There's so much out of this presser.
Well, this one was interesting to me, and he was asked about, you know, a player. And I couldn't understand, so maybe someone else knows what player he's referring to, but that a player during a summer interview made some reference to this being a losing culture, and it was a new player. Do you know
over summer, or was it O'Shawn's?
I took it as O'Shawn's comment.
Okay, was that it?
So that leaving on Sunday, he got quoted as saying that it seems like it's a losing culture.
So it's a losing culture, and so they kind of asked Mickey about that, and I thought he had a really interesting answer here.
We haven't been winning here, okay? But I wouldn't say it's a losing culture, because a losing culture is kids that don't come to work. You know, now these kids don't play in a lot of tight games. You know, I don't think they ever been blown out. They play in a lot of tight games. So now we got to figure out how to get them over the hump. You know, how to get over the hump, and then I got to do a better job with the players before they go to interviews and make comments like that.
I really like that. I love that. That was a quote of the presser for me almost. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the point that, you know, you can argue. I mean, we were 16-31 or whatever it was, you know, so I don't know if it's a losing culture, but we had a lot of losses. But to his point, they're close. So many of them were close. I mean, we have to find a way to get over whatever that gap is in each individual game, because it is a different gap each time. It's a different inch that we seem to have to keep getting over. But at the same token, we also don't say that in the press conference. And that's him taking control over that team and saying, look, this is how we're going to do it moving forward. And this is how we're going to talk moving forward. And that's setting a culture right there too. That's him setting a culture and a standard as the coach, saying, this is how we're going to talk about ourselves when we get in front of the press. So that was probably my favorite quote from the entire presser.
Agreed. What else we got, Hunk?
I thought he was going to.
Yeah, I thought I was expecting another transition there. So
no, good chat, guys.
Good work, guys.
Hey, guys, have a good night. Go Big Red.
No, a couple more here. This is something that this is consistent with what Trev was saying on Sunday. He was asked about being Nebraska's first black head coach, at not just in football, but in any sport.
Like I said, it's about Nebraska football. It's bigger than me. I haven't really thought about that because I've been a football coach. I've been a black football coach all my life, but I haven't thought about that. I'm more concerned about the boys and getting the boys ready to play on Saturday. It's bigger than me.
He's never thought about that. Didn't even dawn on him because he's busy doing the job, but also that this job it's bigger than him, bigger than the individual, and that was something that Trev came out right away and said on Sunday when announcing the firing of Frost, was that this program is bigger than any one individual, and that counts for Trev too. I mean, this is bigger than Trev. This is bigger than any one person, and I guess again, without trying to create narratives and everything. Mickey's answering a question there honestly, but he's also simply he keeps pulling it back to this is not about him. This is about the program. This is about Oklahoma this weekend. This is how we're going to talk to the media. This is how we're going to interact with each other. I mean, it is, if nothing else, he is in every little step that he's doing here. He's trying to create his culture. We'll use the word. He's creating his culture of how we're going to at least act for the next 9 games. And he's not wasting any time to do that.
That question bothered me too. I mean, I get the historical significance of it, but at the same time, that wasn't really the time or the place for it. Considering what we're talking about from an overall perspective of Husker football, right? And like what we're coming up with on the Oklahoma game. Like, I'm sure it's something in retrospect, but this is the guy's first day on the job, right? He's moving into Oklahoma week. He's got 9 games ahead of him, and to me, it was almost like the same, oh, so how long have you been a black quarterback? You know what I mean? And it's like from like what?
Yeah, I don't know if I
just had a weird.
You, Rob.
Watching it live, it was just for me. It was like, oh God, did you really like? That was my first thought. Was like, did you really have to ask that now?
Yeah, I don't know when's the right time to ask that question. To be honest with you, but yeah. I would say that I think he answered it really well.
Yeah.
And I think when
he did.
When this is all over, whenever he's no longer the interim head coach or the head coach or whatever, he'll have time to reflect back on that.
Yeah.
But it's illuminating that. I mean, I'm glad that Mickey Joseph is our first African American head coach.
Yes.
Because it's long overdue that it's never happened.
Be a better guy,
sport, right?
Yeah.
So I think we can just leave it at that. But
yeah, I agree, Dave. I think he handled it really well, and yeah. I do, and I think like Honky said, he redirected it back to the program, which is exactly what he was doing the entire press conference. I'm sorry, I just had to put that out there because it just kind of gave me like a weird twinge feeling when that question was asked. Like, really, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. But it is there, and I think he answered it well and acknowledged it, right? So that's good.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't be a presser about a new football coach here if we didn't ask. At least has Osborne talked to him yet? And Coach Osborne has spoke with Joseph, and I thought it brought a little bit of humor to it here.
Well, he still talks to me like I'm a 19-year-old, but that's cool. But he gave me good advice that he believes in what I'm going to do and discuss what he thinks we need to do. And I don't think I need to go into that what our conversation was about. But he still believes in Nebraska football, and he's still a wise guy. He's really wise. His wisdom is still there. So it's good. It was good to talk to him yesterday, and I'll do that weekly with him.
I felt like a 12-year-old when we were talking to Osborne. So
you acted like one.
Probably with a tie. It was a zipper tie, but no. And I thought that was interesting. Him saying you'll talk with him weekly, and some people, you get a little bit of the sense on Twitter that people are like that they're annoyed. They get annoyed where it's like, can we hire somebody without having to talk to Osborne? Can we do something without having to have Osborne? I have no issue with this, but we have one of the greatest coaches of all time living right here in the city, and he still likes to be involved. And all these people, whether it was Frost or it's Mickey now or it's Trev as the AD, all of them played for Coach. I think it's good to get someone that has a perspective that is so unique, and that is what he has. I mean, You know, he was the coach here for so long. He was an athletic director here. He was on the inaugural college football playoff committee, you know, picking them. I mean, this is somebody that has a lot of football knowledge and football experience. And just like Trev said, when he's talking about looking for the next head coach, he's going to talk to a lot of people. He's going to use his football connections and football experience, because you're going to learn a lot by talking to people that know a lot of football. And so I think that's a really wise move from Mickey to want to talk to coach and to talk to him even on a weekly basis, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I saw some great media posts saying that, you know, Mickey was going to bring Coach Owen as the D-line coach, but I don't think that's going to happen. But he does have an impressive network of other coaches that he can lean on, including his brother, who was an NFL head coach and is the D coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that, you know, he was talking. Yeah, we'll talk about here in Throwing the Bones, when, you know, he starts to get into defense and he gets, you know, questions about that as an offensive coach. And he's like, well, you know, you got to know the other side if you're coaching one. And his brother is a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it is going to be interesting. Maybe this is worth a little bit of discussion before we get to the last offensive video, is like, you know, how as the wide receivers coach, and as I believe most of his coaching tenure has been on the offensive side of the ball. Now, he was a head coach at some smaller levels, but, you know, how can he, you know, manage an entire program and both have offense and defense oversight? You know, I think he had some good responses to that too, but that'll be a critical part of his transition, is to be able to do that.
Well, I also found it interesting too, because he did say he talks to his brother and his cousin every single day, right? And you know, those guys are giving him some input on, like, you know, hey, here's maybe a tweak or two that you can throw into this defense to do this. And, you know, and that could be a reason for a couple of, just like, I won't say coaching changes, but coaching movements that he made right there. Like, you know, they announced today, right? Like saying, okay, because you need two guys back here in the backfield, safeties and corners, right? Like, that's because those are two different sets of eyes that are watching the field. So you need two different perspectives. I thought it was, I think, you know, and that's the thing, is as bad as much as I loved Vance Joseph in Denver.
Very funny, right?
Yeah, I know. I think I'm hilarious.
Well,
you know, I think he's always been known as a great defensive mind, and it'll be interesting to see if any of that knowledge that he gives to Mickey bleeds over onto the field. You know, I mean, he's got 9 games to do that.
Well,
so
before we get there, I'm sure Honky's wanting to get to Throwing the Bones here quick. I know there's one more clip about Mickey facing OU and Brent Venables,
well,
who he has.
That was going to be offense there, and we haven't actually gotten into scoring explosion. So, but
okay.
You know what?
I'm sorry. There's so many clips here. I'm confused.
But Kurt just asked the question here, and let's do this in reverse. He wants to know, can you guys explain the defense and coaching changes? Let's go to Throwing the Bones then.
All right.
And let's do defense first. We're going to talk some defense, go over some of the clips from today, and we'll also talk about actual on the field stuff. What is Oklahoma's offense doing, and what are we going to be defending this weekend? So with that, to answer, you know, to start with, I guess, Kurt's question, then let's look at some of the questions here. We have, here, let's go to coaching defense, and Mickey talks about his brother.
Well, when you're an offensive coach, you better understand defense what it should be. And I always use my brother for example. He was a college quarterback, but he was a defensive back in the NFL. He was a college quarterback. Now he's a DC in the NFL. So you got to know what's going on the other side of the ball. You know what it should be. It's football, guys. It's either 4 down or 3 down. It's either 2 high or 1 high.
It's 4 down
Simple.
or 2 down, 3 high or 1 high, yeah.
So yeah, Honk, I mean, what do you think about that answer, I guess? And I think he's right. It's football, right?
Well, some of it's really simplifying things right now. And what I saw all 3 weeks of the season, I see a defense. It's not void of talent, and I don't even think it's void of effort. They looked lost. They looked lost the whole night against Georgia Southern. They looked lost when Northwestern has a guy going wide open down the field, and they're completing a pass on us. They just look lost at times, and that's coaching. And when it comes to coaching, it's about simplifying things. Then let's not make this harder than it is. Let's not make this rocket science. It's about 4 down and 3 down. It's about 2 high and 1 high. It's how do you simplify things? They're going to do some, and he hit on 2 things in this. He hit on gap integrity, and he hit on how to improve tackling. Tackling is something we have been talking about all season so far. This is before I play it. I don't know. Here, I'm just going to throw it out to you, Dave. How would you improve tackling?
Practice it.
Well, here you go.
Well, I thought they tackled good today. I think that when they have the opportunity to do it, I think they do it well. It's something that it's muscle memory, something that you got to do a lot to get it done. Tackling's not easy. I think what happens when I talk to my brother, he says what happens when he gets college defensive backs, one, they don't process real well because they play nothing but man. And 2, they don't tackle real well. So when we say we had to address the tackling issue, you can't attack it. You can't attack the tackling issue without tackling, and that's what we did.
I mean, oh gosh, I feel like I'm back in my youth football coaching days. I can't believe we're having to have this conversation. But you can't get better at tackling without tackling. And yes. And I know that football has changed, and I get beat up on social media sometimes with some people where I say, take the green jersey off the quarterback every once in a while. No, that's how it's played today. You got to do it that way. You can't have this much contact. And the NCAA, to those people's point, the NCAA has taken away some of the contact. They've taken away some of the 2-a-days and all those things. But at the end of the day, my goodness, you have to tackle. If you don't tackle in practice, then it's going to always show up when you get to the game. It always will. And it's also going to show up with your offensive guys not getting tackled. The best way to break tackles is to have to actually do it. And you know what? I didn't get to be at practices, so I don't see every single thing that they've done, but I think it's a telling tale that Mickey has made that point right away to say that they're focusing on that. So how to improve tackling. Let's simplify things. Let's just, if nothing else, against Oklahoma, can we become better tacklers? That's one thing. The next thing is gap integrity. We saw that the whole night against Georgia Southern. They were just, from alignment to just, 2 guys sometimes going to the same gap, sometimes no one going to a gap. It's something that he addressed here today as well.
Well, I think, anytime they have long runs, it's gap integrity. You got to be in your gap. And we got to fix that. They watch the film and we see what's going on, and it's gap. You guys know that. You just don't bust a big run with somebody there in the gap. If somebody's not in the gap, they're going to give a big run. That's things we got to fix, and that's what we're working on.
That's intriguing to me. Over now, this is the 5th year of Chin's running the defense, and it had progressively gotten better. I felt like we had some gap integrity issues in previous years. Mm-hmm. And then last year, everything seemed to be really good. And maybe that's because we had a bunch of super seniors and some NFL draft picks on that side of the ball that really had been in the system for a long time and knew what they're doing. And now we have some younger guys, but it's also, it does feel like, this 3-4 or 4-3 conversation. And I know we were talking about this a little bit on Sunday, Honk, about, there's 4 guys on the line and maybe one of them doesn't have his hand on the ground or not. I don't know. But after that, there seems to be 2 linebackers and then the nick and then your safeties and corners. It feels a little bit different than what we had been running at times when we had a more of a true nose tackle to be able to play some 3-4. But it should be interesting to see how they can improve on this and improve it quickly, because it felt like last year's squad, which had a lot of experience, was pretty good at gap integrity, and it's not the case right now with this team.
Well, you guys are sitting up in the press box last week, and you mentioned how Boomer, I think, was saying that over the course of the second half, how that quarterback should just be able to take off up the gut. Well, I saw. Sitting in the game and sitting in row 12, I don't get some of the right angles. And so I saw it the next day. there were times where we lined up and we'd have 2 down linemen or 2 tackles, but they'd be outside the guards, heads up on the tackle, maybe even outside shading the tackle. And there's no one in between except for one linebacker. And in those settings, just from an alignment standpoint, you're just begging for something right up the gut. Now, to your point, Dave, a year ago when we were in a true 3, you almost always had Damian Daniels right there on the center. Even if there was no one within 5 feet of him on each side, it doesn't matter. You at least had him in the middle. There's some immovable kind of piece that they were going to have to focus on. But I mean, my goodness, there are times that it felt like we just got spread out beyond belief. There kind of looked like a Pelini defense almost.
Yeah, you're
running
right.
the dollar, and I was like, yeah, we're begging for them to. Well, and that's also part of when I've talked about our running style, which our attack on running the game back on week 1 and week 2, where we're not going to line up in double tights, we're not going to line up in full house backfields like Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin do. But then if you're going to do that, then you've got to be able to do things to spread teams out or have the mobile quarterback to do it. Whatever it is, something has to give. You have to stretch them horizontally or stretch them vertically. And certainly what Georgia Southern seemed to do was stretch us horizontally. I mean, my goodness, but there were times our defense just looked completely we were not in position numbers wise to make plays in the middle of the field. And that's where they were hitting us.
Yeah, there was a few moments, I was sitting in the south stands there. Great. They were good enough tickets. I could see the whole field. Sometimes the ball got further away, but there was a couple times where they were coming at us, right? Georgia Southern had the ball coming towards our end zone. And my wife does not know football at all. She literally couldn't care less about being there. She was just there with me, having a good time, a nice weekend with me. And there was a couple times where she, like, it's so simple sometimes when you hear it. She's just like, how come they didn't put anybody there to tackle that guy? like there was never anybody there. He just like ran to that spot, and that's
maybe some staff openings.
Yeah, and
got arrested.
Yeah, she's like maybe if they put a guy there and he could tackle him, and it was just like so simple. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, Rach, love you, babe. Like,
but she had a point, didn't she?
She had a great point.
And she's not wrong.
No, she's not. And she's like, why do they look so confused? Like there was times where like guys were running around. She's like, oh, they're not ready yet. Don't hike it. Don't let them hike it. They're not ready yet. Like she literally said that too at one point. God.
Well, I think the confusion thing is important. And the confusion thing, and this is something that Mickey addressed, is that they're going to go with 2 defensive back coaches here. And especially when you are, I mean, we talked about this before the season, Dave, were we focusing enough over the offseason on the fact that we lost our 2 safeties and we lost Cam Taylor-Britt, but the 2 safeties that had so many starts. And the idea is that, we're probably not going to be too affected until we get to playing probably Oklahoma this week. There weren't too many teams on the schedule that would maybe take that much advantage of it. But at the end of the day, it hasn't even been about the opponent at this point. They've looked absolutely lost. And so again, let's focus on what can we fix in a short period of time, and this is what Mickey did.
He was already back there with the nickels, and we kind of just let him work, with the safeties, so we can give them some independent, coaching, and Fisher would go straight to the corners and the nickels. But if you look around the country, everybody in the country has 2 DB coaches because it's 2 different positions, safeties and corners. If you look at the NFL, they got 2 DB coaches. We were the only one in the country, I think, had 1 DB coach. Fisher has 2 eyes. You got 4 guys back there. You can't see all of that. So it makes sense to have a coach back there with the safeties, and usually it's the coordinator, and that's why we decided to put Shin in. He agreed because we got to do what's going to help us get better.
In Shin's last year, he was the guy working with the Nick. He was working with JoJo. That was kind of that was Shin's position to work with.
Yeah.
But It was interesting to hear Mickey talking about how, nobody has only 1 DB's coach. I didn't realize that. Now, of all things, Bill Bush has been a safeties coach many times before. In fact, I believe he was safeties coach and special teams coordinator when he was at Nebraska. So, it wouldn't have been out of the realm to think that he could be assisting there too. But it's just that no matter what, they want to get more eyes into the backfield. And I think to Kurt's question earlier, that's one of the biggest changes from a coaching standpoint, what they're going to do, at least, starting off right away this week. And so hopefully, these are immediate changes that the idea is that we can see a fairly quick turnaround. You can't go out and get 50 free agents. We're not going to be able to flip the roster, none of those things. You're not really going to be able to flip a scheme a lot, but what are the things that you can do to get a team to play faster and gap integrity, tackle better, and just a little more individual attention at some positions that are still young that can help.
Yeah, we're not the only school that still had that one guy running the entire secondary. It does seem to be a trend that people are splitting that up, the safeties and corners a lot more. I took a quick look at the Big Ten, like Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota. They all split that up. Some teams keep it under one guy, like Iowa. They must put that savings towards offense. So, not well for them. So, but yeah, it does seem to be the trend in modern coaching to kind of split that position up, and maybe rightfully so. Because they are kind of different positions, and they probably do need some individual attention, especially as pass happy as teams are these days.
Did I hear that correctly? That Fisher will have the nickel now, though. Is that right? Did I hear that?
I think nickel and corners is what he will have.
Interesting. So, Boomer, what do you? I mean, when we were walking away from the game, I mean, the question was like, and this is even before the change, is like, how are you going to fix that defense, right? I mean, it's just like, what can you do to make a change there? What are you looking for against Oklahoma? We're not looking for miracles here. I think to Hockey's point, hopefully maybe this is incremental improvement over the next month or two. But I mean, what would be one sign you would say, like, point to and say, hey, that was a step in the right direction next week?
Yeah, it's they haven't had a lot of time to practice it, but I just say if we're just not having those issues of people lining up in the wrong gaps and the wrong holes, I think just line up right. Again, you've only had a week to work on this and try to get that right. But if you can just start that,
simplify,
so you're not seeing those glaring errors where guys are lining up and covering the same hole, their heads in the wrong spot. I mean, that's just an open invitation for offenses to take advantage of that stuff. And Georgia Southern did that, and they were very good at it and seeing it, and they took advantage of it. So if you can just at least cut that down, give your guys in better position, maybe they can make a few more plays. It's going to be a very incremental process. It's probably good that we have a bye week after Oklahoma, because that gives us a whole other week to practice this stuff before we start conference play. Indiana's not an offensive juggernaut, so we have some time to hopefully put some stuff together for it and get a little better at it and to start putting some of these changes in practice. But yeah, let's just line up right. That's what I want to see this week. Start doing that. And I think we'll be in good shape. Or better shape. How about that? Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, the last video I want to show then on the D, and then maybe after this we can break down. I know we're spending so much time on us, and we have this top 10 team coming in. It'd be nice to talk a little bit Oklahoma and Oklahoma's offense, and what they bring. But the last bit of us, let's focus on us for a second. It's the need to have to play faster. And I think that's ultimately everything we've talked about so far with defense, and what we'll talk about with offense too, is it's all leading to the we need to play faster football. And let's just.
I met with Coach Shins, and we're going to play faster. We're going to tackle in practice. We're going to detail what we're doing with our kids. We're going to make our kids hold themselves accountable, and we try to fix the problems.
So, they're all words right now. We'll find out on Saturday at 11 a.m. how much, it made a difference. I know a week ago right now, what we were talking about was when Frost was coach, he was saying, hey, we went ones versus ones last week. That was our whole thing, right? And we were expecting to see a major difference on the lines of scrimmage last week, and a big difference with tackling and all that stuff. And it didn't come through. So it's all words until we see it on the field. But at least they're new words, a new voice.
Fair.
As Trev would say, they were new words coming from a new voice, and hopefully we see it.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Are we ready to switch sides?
Well, Oklahoma's offense here. We're still talking
I'm
about our
sorry.
defense. So, I mean,
let
who
me just
did
throw
the
some names
breakdown?
out. Let me throw some names out.
Yeah.
Boomer, you can, or Boomer, go for it then.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a little bit of Oklahoma in the last couple days, tried to pick up a little bit. I know we didn't get to see a lot of the start of the game, but I've followed up on it. Kind of Oklahoma against Kent State, they started really sluggish on that game. Oklahoma's been trying to get a running game established. They haven't, rocked the world on that completely. I think they were held to like 7 rushing yards against Kent State. So it wasn't great first half. That was the first half stat anyway, but they eventually blew that game open. It seems like their go-to guy so far has been Marvin Mims on offense.
Yeah.
So he's been having a pretty solid year for them so far. I think he's got over about 250 yards and several touchdowns, but they do have quite a few different, targets they go to in the air, but he'll be the name you definitely want to watch for on offense. They've got kind of 2 running backs who are trying to get in, Eric Gray and Marcus Major. Again, they struggled against, Kent State, but eventually it took a while. Their passing game kind of opened up the running game a little bit in that second half. So those would be the 2 names you look for on that. So they've been fairly balanced on offense, a little more pass heavy, just because I think the way the first half against Kent State went primarily. So we'll see what they're able to do, I think. But those are on offense, those are the names you're going to look for, I think, primarily this week. So at least the big names. I mean, defensively, they've got some other players we'll talk about later. But those are the big offensive names.
So from a recruiting standpoint, Oklahoma's has done well for themselves, but maybe not to quite the same level of an Alabama or a Georgia. And they did have a lot of folks transfer out when Lincoln Riley left. He was an offensive-minded coach. Obviously, Caleb Williams, his quarterback, went with him. But Dylan Gabriel, a UCF quarterback who was there after Frost was there, is now there, and he can do quite a bit with both his arm and legs. Eric Gray, Boomer, you mentioned him. He was a transfer in from Tennessee when Tennessee went through a coaching change, and is a pretty highly regarded running back from a recruiting perspective. So, I mean, Oklahoma definitely has weapons, but I mean, Boomer's right. Marvin Mims is the guy that you got to be a little worried about, especially with what that secondary has looked like.
Yeah, it seems like from looking at a lot of the stats from their games too that one, they seem to have like some pretty quick scoring capabilities. The time of possession in both their games is basically they're right around 20 minutes of possession compared to like 38, 39 minutes for the opposing team. But the other team is only scoring 13 points, 3 points respectively, right? And I think the one key thing that I see here, their third down efficiency, last week they were 3 for 12. And against Texas El Paso, they were 3 for 8. So it almost seems like if our defense can hold them to like a third down or something along those lines, that that's generally where that they seem to struggle. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but
so what you're saying, get off the field, right? I mean, that's literally the thing that we've, what was it? Georgia Southern started off 7 of 7 on third downs against us last weekend. To your point, Rob, I mean, if we're in third and anything, I'll say third and long is anything, 3rd and 8 or longer. In those situations, you just got to get off the field and improve tackling, gap integrity. All those things can play an immediate role in helping get us off the field when we get into those kind of situations.
Yeah, I mean, their passing and rushing yards are pretty even too. I mean, they had 400 yards of offense last week. They had under 500 yards the week before. Pretty much almost split down the middle for all intents and purposes as far as run passes go. So it's kind of it'll be an interesting to kind of see how they play that against us, especially after what Georgia Southern did to us on the passing front. Of course, they did run off some pretty good runs too. So with 600 yards of offense, you're going to get quite a bit of both. But
I would say a note just from a coaching staff perspective, the OC is Jeff Lebby, who was at Ole Miss the last couple of years under Lane Kiffin, had Matt Corral as a quarterback, and that was a pretty dynamic offense. And it was definitely Brent Venables kind of waited for Lebby to get through with everything to add him to the staff. So it was definitely his guy. He wanted to have his OC, and so we'll see where that goes.
Well, should we head over to scoring explosion? I don't think Dave will probably talk as long on offense because there wasn't as much discussed today on it. But ironic. There wasn't, offense.
Maybe it's because they didn't look so bad last week compared to the defense.
we looked like we had I had a lot that I liked that I saw on Saturday. I mean,
that offense beats Northwestern, I think,
Yeah. The QB was mobile. He ran around a little bit, but there's a nice mix of the run and the pass there, and they rolled out the QBs, and we had double tights at times, and I mean it was more imaginative, to use the Frost term. It was a more imaginative offense, and that clearly wasn't the issue last weekend.
God, how good is Grant? Can we just praise that boy some more? I swear to God, man, that kid. Oh, he's just so much fun to watch.
What was his carries and yards last week?
He had, of course, you asked that now. Right as my.
I mean, AJ Allen looked pretty good too. I'll fill in the space here while someone looks that up. Because overall, we had a pretty good run game, and you're right, Rob. I mean, offensively, just having an actual running back, it's been a long time. So
yeah, really.
Well, I'm looking at Grant here, and he has
27 carries, 138 yards, and a touchdown. So
27 carries.
Yeah, 27.
Right?
Yeah,
27 carries, 138.
He has 428.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he has 428 rushing yards so far through 3 games. So we're a quarter of the way done. I mean, that's a 1,700. He's on pace for a 1,700 yard season.
I was going to say he could, and call me crazy, but I mean,
I'll call you crazy, Rob. Don't worry about that.
I know, but there's a chance. Realistically, I was looking at those numbers, Honky, and as the offense really does start to roll here, there's a good chance he might go for 2,000 yards this season. You don't think so, Dave? You think not against?
No, I mean, I get where you're going, but I think defenses are going to get better. And they're going to, if he's having that big of a year, they're going to start keying on him.
It just seems like he's always slipping the first 1 or 2 guys. He gets behind a guy and all of a sudden he pops out one side or the other and he busts around the end. And
I'm saying the Big Ten is good at rush defense.
Yeah. And that's what I want to see. I want to see, how does the first 3 games translate in going forward? I mean, Oklahoma's defense has actually been pretty good this year. I mean, granted, their competition has been terrible, but Kent State moved the ball, but they were able to stop them, from scoring. And then I want to see
defense from the vaunted D coordinator Ted Roof. I mean, good grief.
Exactly. And Venables is a defensive guy too. But I do want to see, can we keep this going as we're hitting that Power 5 competition? And I think it seems like he can, just from what we've seen. But that'll be the key to the season going.
Yeah,
forward.
but who would I be if I can't make some kind of an inane prediction that never comes true? I mean,
you wouldn't be Redcast Rob, really.
That's right. That's
I don't.
One of these
think
days I'm going to nail it.
I don't think that he will keep on that pace. Let me be very clear there. He's on pace right now for a 1,700 yard season, but he only has to go through Oklahoma and 8 more Big Ten teams. So we'll see what that is. I mean, but I definitely think he's on pace if he stays healthy. Obviously, and we all pray for that. He's certainly on pace to become 1,000-yard back, and that is something that we haven't had a lot of lately, and that'd be a very good step in the right direction. One thing on offense here, too, that was noted today, offensive analyst Mike Casano, he has been promoted to the position of wide receivers coach, Coach Kaz, as they call him there. He came with Frost from UCF, so he was with Frost for the last 7 years, and has been an analyst here for the last 4. So he'll be taking over the wide receiver position for Mickey. Mickey said he was still going to be involved with that position in some capacity, but at the end of the day, he's the head coach now and he can't do all that. I did want to mention, you guys had talked about Venables, and Venables, of course, was the longtime defensive coordinator at Oklahoma and then at Clemson. Mickey brought that up today here, just about how he has gone up against Venables when he was at Clemson, so they do have some familiarity with each other.
Venables was a really good coach. I went against him when he was at Clemson. He's a really good defensive coordinator. Now he's a head coach, so I know some of the things that they was doing on defense they're going to do when they're at Clemson. So we understand that, but it's a big opportunity for the players, and I think they're excited.
Think of how excited Casey Thompson is. I mean, here's a guy that we talked about all offseason. Casey Thompson had a great game last year against Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout, and their defense let them down. And all offseason we were talking about, imagine what the black shirts could do, and not to let them down, and that combo of Casey really hitting it and the defense. Well, hopefully that's what we start seeing now this week. But Casey, I know, is excited to play against his dad's alma mater coming in here, so that will be a lot of fun there. What do we know about Oklahoma's defense, Boomer?
Yeah, like I said, they'd had a pretty solid first couple of weeks here. Again, the talent wasn't great, but they have played really well, basically not allowing hardly any points, really. It's like they're playing Iowa every week, so it's pretty impressive on that end. Names you really want to watch for, they've got a linebacker, Danny Stutzman. I know he got hyped up a lot. He's a sophomore, but he really is kind of playing up to the hype. He's got, I think this last week he had 12 tackles, 4 for loss, a sack. He graded really high. Billy Bowman's another guy in the secondary you're going to want to watch for. He had a lot of interceptions so far this year. He's a name you'll want to look for. So there are names. Their defense seems to be good, which is something we didn't always expect from that kind of Big 12 Oklahoma type team. We're probably used to the Big 12 being, just who cares about defense type thing. Let's score 65 and hope that counts. But Oklahoma seems like they've shifted that a little bit so far this season. Again, they haven't played anyone, resembling a Power 5 team so this will be their first real test of the season too, to see how stout that defense really is. So that's one of the fascinating matchups of this weekend and what I'm excited to watch for. So.
Offensively, and I think Rob hit on this earlier, he talked about time of possession. When we played Oklahoma last year, I went down to the game, and I was there in 2008, the first year of Pelini, when we were down 35-0 at the end of the first quarter. And, well, I think we all were there other than Rob. But anyways, doesn't matter. We were down 35-0. And to get down 35-0, granted, one of them was a pick six. But other than that, that meant that Oklahoma had to have 4 possessions in the first quarter to get to 35. So last year, when I'm in the stands, and all I was doing was just watching the clock. That was really the thing I was more intrigued with. And it took them about 7 minutes to get down the field, and they had to convert some 3rd and longs and things, but they scored a touchdown. Martinez gets on the field. Of course, we jump off sides a couple times before we get our first snap, the usual. But we struggle, we figure out a way to get down the field. It takes about 7 minutes. We kick a field goal. We make it. That was a shocker. And with about a minute left, Oklahoma's getting the ball for the second time, and we're down 7-3. And all I could say, it's very early in the game, but I'm like, that's a win. That's a win for us. We are playing the style of game that we want to play against them, which was a very disciplined, of all things, disciplined, run heavy, move the clock, a Big Ten style of kind of game that Frost employed. Can Whipple do that? Or does he?
What style of game do you want to? What style of game do you think we want to play this weekend?
You're saying a shootout versus,
Yeah, we
want to protect the defense.
Our offense seems to be very shootout oriented.
We may not have a choice.
Yeah, do we need to turn this into a classic Big 12 style game? Is that what we need to do?
I would be in favor of. I think the time of possession is going to be very important. I think that we need to take as much time off. We have been very successful this year in finishing drives with touchdowns. I got to give the offense a lot of credit there. We haven't been settling for a lot of field goals, but it wouldn't kill me at all to see a bunch of 5 and 6 and 7 minute drives. I think that would be really important because, as we've seen, Oklahoma doesn't take a lot of time and doesn't need a lot of time to score touchdowns and score points. So the less time they have the ball, the better.
Are we situated to do that? We've seen that in a lot of our drives. We tend to move pretty quickly. We move up tempo. And that was part of the problems, in the game with Georgia Southern. We left them too much time on our last scoring drive. We moved the ball so quickly and we scored.
Yeah.
Is that what we're meant to be? I don't know. So.
And for scoring touchdowns, we're scoring touchdowns.
Shift in philosophy at this point, I don't know. So.
Yeah, Dave, you're.
Yeah, no, I see where Boomer's going there. I think if we can establish a run game versus Oklahoma, that's going to be a big deal, right? So, we can, take our shots. And then, Boomer, to your point, that last drive, I don't think we needed to take that shot to Marcus Washington. That ended up, after review, getting us down to the 1. I think we could have kept on running the ball and drained off another minute or minute and a half, and that we might have a completely different result in that game if we didn't give them 4 minutes to score, right? We had to do one or the other. We ended up actually putting it right where they had enough time to score but didn't give us anything back, right? So I think, if we're going to take that approach and try to save our defense a little bit, we got to commit to the run game and then execute it. And if we can do that, that's amazing. But we may have to throw the ball at some point.
Dave, I think you have a really interesting perspective here. We had a former Husker head coach from back in the day that was up in the press box, and you were able to sit close enough to him. You could just hear him talking about, and he talked about it was George Darlington, and he teaches a football class and has over the years and stuff. And he just kind of was talking about the timing, like, everything you just said there. I mean, when you got to the end, it's like, well, this team's not going to stop them, so you better have this much time left, and if you don't, you're going to run out.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, George Darlington knows more football. He's forgotten more than we will ever learn, right?
Yep.
And I mean, he was like, they either needed to let Georgia Southern score right away, or they should have taken more time off the clock while we had the ball, right? And we did the exact opposite. We gave them 4 minutes, I think, to 3 or 4 minutes to drive down there, and they gave us 36 seconds back, right? If we had a minute 36. We might have had plenty of time to get in much better field goal range. And if we only gave them 2 minutes, they maybe would have had a completely different set of plays they would have had to run, because they wouldn't have had as much time to execute their 2-minute drills.
If we had a minute 36, there's a good chance that we scored the touchdown. I mean, the way that we're moving.
Truth, huh?
And
of course, we might have scored it in 36 seconds, and they'd have had a minute to score. And
there you go.
This could have gone on all night. Yeah.
It never ends. But to your point, Dave, that one throw that was to Washington that came down to the 1 yard line, and it's a great throw. It's a great catch. It was right in front of me. And I mean, heaven forbid. I mean, I don't want to come back negative on the team for making a play. I mean, they made a great play. It's just more it is that thing of, this is going to be a game where I think we're going to be better off with fewer possessions than more. I think just knowing our defense right now, I don't want to see them on the field more times than I have to. And if our offense can chew up 8 minutes, on the clock, I mean, literally, that's what North Dakota did to us. That's what Northwestern wants to do to us. And everyone said that we're more talented than those teams. Well, then fine. I'll agree that Oklahoma is more talented than us. So let's not give them the ball more times than they need it.
Yep, that's right.
Well, I think that probably does the offense pretty good here. I'm going to take off, do my parting shot, but then let you guys do the Betcast. I just want to say here for it was a crazy Sunday, obviously, at Memorial Stadium with Coach Frost being let go. But they also they had a Husker Heroes event. They do it every year annually. Alex, my son, he has autism. That is one of the reasons, or that's why he's welcome there, I guess, to Husker Heroes each year. And they just do an amazing job. He gets to go on the field and play with they throw footballs around, do all kinds of stuff. And they're AJ Allen, a couple other players here. Everyone's they're so good to him. So anyways, I posted that. Seriously, thank you all. I know there was a lot going on today, obviously. Really appreciate you all taking time out for this event. Alex loved it. He had a good time with it. And so, even in a hard time like that, a hard day like that, it was a proud moment for me to be a Husker fan. So go Big Red. I'm going to let you guys go. Go Betcast.
The Betcast Picks of the Week.
All right, guys. We are on to the Betcast segment of the show, and one last plug for the Go Big Redcast bets. If you haven't join right now. It's going to be highly competitive all year long, and that is indicative of how the Betcast turned out last week with our best bets. Producer Skip, unfortunately, now 0 for 3 on the year. I'm sure he's doing quite well in all of his other bets, but whatever he picks is not hitting here. But
if his college pick'em is any indication, it's not doing well, Dave.
That's right. But Boomer, you easily took USC at 7.5 at Stanford. USC, I think it was up 41-14 at one point. Let Stanford get a couple late touchdowns, but had that game easily in hand. I sweat a little bit with Duke and Northwestern as they scored early and often, at least the Blue Devils did, but then they kind of went into a stalemate, and I took the under 57.5. And Rob, you didn't really sweat this one either. Air Force at 17.5, easily covering that against.
I was sweating it like the first 10 minutes of the game. I think it was only like 7-3.
Yeah, and then you weren't sweating it any longer. But Rob, what's your record now this year?
3-0.
3-0. It's impressive that your gut is 3-0. I'm quite impressed with that.
Hey, look at Dave. I've done a lot to lose this gut. Okay.
Well, I mean, you keep on winning with that gut because I don't think you're doing a lot of
Yeah, you want
analytics
to
with
keep it. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, I've never been one to overthink anything.
That's right. Well, keep it up, man, because you're making us look pretty smart here with our best bets. But Boomer and I are holding up our end at 2-1 on both, and so as long as Skip turns this thing around, if we were a betting syndicate, I think we'd end up being profitable, hopefully, for anybody who's following us through the course of the year. That's our goal, right? All right, guys. What do you want to talk about? What you're looking at this week?
Well, there's some interesting ones because if you just looked at it on paper and you didn't know what you're talking about, I think got Notre Dame favored at 10.5 over Cal. Are we supposed to stick to Big Ten right now, or are we?
No, whatever.
Okay.
You can jump on that one. The Big Ten's not a great slate.
Yeah,
so
and there's not. Yeah, they don't have like the greatest play outside of the Nebraska, Oklahoma, and again, I don't bet on Nebraska, so. That's an interesting one just because Cal is it's only a 10.5 point spread. It almost feels like that's a gimme for Notre Dame. The over-under is 41, but I mean, Notre Dame hasn't looked all that great either so far.
And Rob, are you aware that Notre Dame's starting quarterback, Travis Buckner, is out?
Yes, I am.
And they're 0-2.
Yes, I do know they're 0-2. That's why it's just kind of like you look at it and you think like 10, like that's what I'm saying. On paper, you look at it and you think, oh, that would be a really good bet. But thank you for bringing up the points that I was going to bring up that like 10.5 seems, iffy, and the over-under is 41. And it'll be questionable. Like I said, Cal is 2-0. I mean, I don't remember the last time Cal was 2-0 in anything.
Yeah, that's Justin Wilcox.
Yeah.
So I think. Yeah, I would probably look at the under on this one. You have a Notre Dame team that's been struggling to score anyway, and now you have a backup quarterback. Cal's not an explosive offense either, and is defensive minded. It's a really low number, but I could see an under 41 in that one.
Yeah, it's a scary 41 because I mean, it really all you got.
It's no Iowa game where you feel like it's gimme.
Right. Oh.
Boomer, what do you?
Iowa jokes would be so much better
there's
this
a
week.
couple of games that. Speaking of Iowa. The line on that, you can get it at Iowa minus 23 to minus 23.5.
Can they score that many points?
Well, I mean, if they get like 12 safeties and a couple of field goals, maybe, but that just seems like a heck of a lot. I mean, it's Nevada. I know that, but in Nevada is usually not a world-beating type team, but gosh.
And they're worse than usual this year. We've talked about Nevada.
Yeah. I mean, Nevada's
every week so far.
I mean, they're not, I mean, they've I'm just looking at Nevada. I mean, their talent, the teams they played haven't been good. It's New Mexico State, Texas State, and Incarnate Word, but they scored 23, 38, and 41. I mean, even if they average on the low end, that means Iowa has to score 40-something. I don't know if that's even physically possible for Iowa at this point. I mean, unless Brian Ferentz gets a few more cameos called his way.
Maybe they'll score like 4 defensive touchdowns.
Yeah,
Iowa's defense is much better than what Nevada's played. So, I mean, I could see
it is, but I mean, you're still asking Iowa has to score somehow. I mean, and they haven't shown any capability of that at all so far this year, which is the tricky part. And, if Nevada scores twice, that might be beyond Iowa's offense at this point to put that much up. And so I don't know. I'm going to wait on that and see what the line is on Thursday. That's what I was thinking of. And then another one, Rob, you mentioned this, when we were talking the other day, just Colorado is just god awful.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they've got Minnesota this week, who's looked really sharp in their first 2 games. And
Minnesota, I think, blanked them last year.
I'd probably
Minnesota beat the Tar.
I'd probably take the over 46.5 on this one, but that spread 27.5. I mean, that spreads like that scare me. Anything over a spread over 20 always scares me.
Yeah, I think the over
personally as a better. I just, I mean,
27.5. It's under a key number, obviously, of 28.
28, yeah.
If you can get that still, I mean, I'd be pretty tempted to take that. It's on my list. I'm seeing we have a listener, Brian Viator, throwing up some suggestions. One of them that I agree with is the Kansas plus 9.5. It might be at 10.5 now versus Houston. Kansas 2-0. Who would have thought, guys, right? And the rare they were 13.5 point dogs last week versus West Virginia. They win by 13 in overtime, double overtime, I believe. I mean, Lance Leipold might be the real deal there. And it seems like Kansas could potentially keep that within single digits. I don't know.
Did you mean to say the future Nebraska coach?
I'm not going to go that far, but he is a viable candidate, Rob.
He is definitely
Let's put
viable.
it
I'm joking, Dave, just because it's exactly what I hate doing at this point. So,
all right. Anything else out there on the board, guys?
Well, the one Brian brought up, and I was thinking of writing again. They paid off nicely last week. USC, I think they were at minus 12 with Fresno. USC's putting up a lot of points. Their offense seems to be rolled pretty nicely, so that's another one I'm going to kind of keep an eye on. Well, so that we may just go with them again this week.
If you want a good kick to the gut, the over under on the Georgia Southern University
that's right.
is on the UAB game is 54.5. And
what's the spread on it?
UAB is actually an 11.5 point favorite in that game.
Is there something we're missing on that?
I
was trying to figure that out.
A win against them. That's what we're missing, a win against them.
It will be intriguing to watch that. I mean, to your point, Boomer, I guess, just looking at our game, you'd think that would go over at least.
Yeah.
And it seems like Georgia Southern could be very competitive in that game. I don't know if they can keep this up. And it's very different to have a big shot at a Power 5 team and then have to go play a UAB in a completely different atmosphere. But
Georgia Southern is obviously a playoff team this year.
Certainly, of course, top 5 at least. So,
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be the Cincinnati of this year.
A couple of them that are my potential ticket. Looking at the under 50 at San Diego State and Utah. Could see that San Diego State mucks up games and slows everything down. And I think Utah's pretty good, but I think they'll just be looking to try to win that by double digits and get out of town without much of an issue. So that could be interesting. I saw that Michigan State is a dog to Washington. Is that right, guys? You guys see that?
They are correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Michigan State looks pretty good. They haven't played anybody yet, but I don't know much about Kellen DeBoer and that Washington Huskies quite yet. But I guess I'm going to have to do a little research more on that one because that was surprising.
Yeah, it's 3.5 point spread on that one. Over under is 56.5. It's at Washington. I mean, is that why? Like, I have no idea because both these teams. I mean, Michigan State 2-0. They're number 11 and they're a dog at Washington. I don't get it. You're right. Like it's just
doesn't add up, right?
Yeah,
I think
it doesn't.
Up there.
Yeah, something. Is there somebody like a key player that's out that anyone knows about, or is there
that I don't know?
Another one I thought like a cigar won't light in the humid conditions of Seattle. I don't.
Yeah, or battle of teams I don't trust. You've got Purdue and Syracuse this week. It's basically a pick 'em. I mean, you get that -1.
It's a night game. Starts at 5:30. So plenty of rest during the day. I don't know. Like, are they planning on like letting Michigan State go out to the bars the night before or something?
Rob, we had turned over to a different
I'm
game
so
already.
sorry.
Yeah, we're at Purdue Syracuse, Rob. So yeah.
Oh, Syracuse.
Different time zones, so we're all right.
So I'm rooting for Purdue, obviously, because that's a big win for the Big Ten West if Purdue can knock that off. And Syracuse looked pretty good against Louisville in the first game of the year. So that's interesting. A couple of Big Ten games, and maybe we'll get out of here. That also is intriguing. Indiana is favored by 6.5 versus Western Kentucky. I don't know if Indiana deserves to be favored against anybody, but sure, I guess I'll think about that one a little bit. And I lost my bet last week with Michigan. I took the over 50, and they were over 50. It was 42-0 at half versus Hawaii, but of course there's the backdoor cover, and Hawaii scores late. It's 56-10 instead of 56-3, and I lose that bet. But I may ride and just have a different approach. They're playing another horrible team. Michigan has like the easiest start to the season, and they're playing Connecticut, which is awful.
We talk about runways, and you could launch a couple 747s off of the start of the schedule. Yeah, this is
47.5. I think is the spread. I don't know about that, but the over is 57.5.
It's at 60 right now.
Now it's at 60. You could have got it earlier. You could have got it just yesterday at 57.5. And that pretty attractive. I got that actually.
And of course, to our betcasters, just so you know, we don't make our picks until Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. Our best bets, I should say. until the numbers have pretty much settled down at that point. So, while we're talking about this now, just, keep an eye on the numbers here. Don't take our word for a lot of the things that we say now, because those numbers can change.
That was a good PSA, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Anything else on the board you want to talk about?
I will say the line has moved in the Nebraska-Oklahoma game a lot more towards Nebraska's favor from what it was.
It's 11. It's 11.
It's
right
11
now.
and a half. You can get a 10.5 few sites at the moment.
Actually,
so.
on the Pick Center on our what do you call it? The chalk on ESPN actually has that at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Even 11. No, not 11.
So that's interesting. Yeah.
And that changed while we were sitting here, actually, half
Mm-hmm.
a point. So they must be listening to the show and understand it's going to be a shootout. That's what it is.
Sure.
I just assume everyone listens, Dave. It's just,
Well, they do. That's you don't need to assume that.
we are now
No,
official
it's a given.
Huskers.
I mean,
We're now
you hear
official
what other people
Huskers
talk about
media.
the
I'm surprised we're not
phrases.
listening
Do
to
we-
the media guide.
Influence is the question. All right, let's get out of here, guys. Rob, what do you have for me? Parting shots.
Well, parting shot. I just want to say, you know what? Keep your heads up, Huskers. Let's not worry about what's going to happen at the end of the season. Let's just worry about this next game coming up on Saturday, because that is the most important game of the season. And then after that, it'll be a bye week. And then Indiana will be the most important game of the season. And just one game at a time, that's all we're going to do. Coach Joseph is our guy right now, and that's the only person we need to worry about supporting as coach for the Huskers at this time. Go Big Red.
Sounds like you listen to that presser pretty closely, Rob. Good points. All right, Boomer, get me out of here.
Similar kind of talk to Rob there. I think the big advantage to having made the move that we did and letting the coach go is now there's no pressure on this team for the rest of the season. We don't have to have that cloud hanging over it, and all these games are essentially with house money. It's just go out there, play, have fun. You're not trying to save somebody's career. You're not trying to keep a fan base, happy. Just go out, play games, and as fans, you can just kind of go out and enjoy them and just enjoy it for the game it is, and not have to worry about all the little infighting and everything else that we were doing, and that'll be great. And so, kind of brought a little bit of relief, I think, to everyone, and brought some enjoyment back to the season. So. Just go out, have fun. It's Oklahoma week. Let's do that. And don't forget the Oklahoma-Nebraska history from the Go Big Red cast we did with Mike Babcock. So
Yes, absolutely. I was just going to promo that. I'm sure we'll have some mentions of that in our Twitter and Facebook feeds, but you could definitely go check out that really awesome show that you guys did with Mike Babcock a few months ago on the Oklahoma series. 2 hours of just a deep dive on Oklahoma, Nebraska, all the way back as far as you can go. So well worth the listen. Definitely going to get you hyped for the game, and should be a lot of fun. All right, guys. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
A Huda Media Production.